So in this video I'm going to show you how to modify these pads for professional play. No one wants to be a noob, do they? And what we're going to do today, we're going to countersink these pads, and what that means is go from this to this. Because when playing, there's nothing worse than these horrible dome screws. These countersunk screws where the holes aren't even, cut properly. Or even these are kind of annoying as well. So let's modify our pads properly and get this job done correctly. So let's talk about countersink drill bits real quick. It does kind of play an important role somewhat. It does kind of depend. You have really 4 major types of material that you see on the market these days. Each in order of, how expensive it is, how durable it is, how robust it is. Usually number 1 is like the carbide one. Number 2, a step down, would be like a high-speed steel with a titanium oxide kind of like coating. It's advertised as a titanium tip. One underneath that would be like a high-speed steel, and one under that would be the one you want to avoid, which is like a cheap Chinese one, sometimes marketed as titanium and high-speed steel, so do be careful with that. And I totally forgot to mention the cobalt drill bit. It's only around 5 to 7% cobalt. It's kind of mixed in with high-speed steel, but that will go in around here. But again, I'll link all the products in the description below, so you can check them out. So they'll come in different angles and things like that. The angle is somewhat standardized, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. And all different styles as well. You can see this one has a 1 edge cutting blade right there, which works quite well. This one has multiple blades, 5 on there. I find that between 1 and 3 work pretty good. Again, it does depend. And there are ones that kind of look like this with a hole in here. I'd avoid those completely. They don't really work so well. So what are the things you need for this job? I'll link all the parts and all the tools and everything in the description below, so check those out. The number 1 and most important thing you need is a variable speed drill like this one here. And what variable speed means, it has multiple speeds. You can turn this dial right here and you can slow down the rotation of the drill itself. That is very important, because when you drill metal, for example, of these pads right here, it needs to be slow. You can't drill it like you would drill wood. It needs to be a lot slower, because if you do drill it like you drill wood, you're going to end up with something like this. So not only do you get rough cuts in your sockets right here, but your drill bits will soon die over time. You can see it's heated up from the high speed rotation, and you're going to ruin your tools, waste money, waste time, and end up with a crappy product like that. We don't want to do that. And the last thing you'll need are the actual countersinking screws right here. Now the ones for the middle of the pad right here in the brackets, if you're in a public location, then you're going to want to do these probably, otherwise people are going to tamper with your pads perhaps. And these are M6. M6 just stands for 6 millimeters, which is the diameter of the threads right there. And for the strips in the middle, for people who play doubles, which should be everyone because doubles is great, these are M4, so they're 4 millimeters. And you can see they come in different flavors of the heads. I've gone with the hex head here. You can get a Phillips head as well, but I like the hex a lot better. It's really up to you, it doesn't really matter. So that's all the tools you're going to need for this job. So the first thing you want to do is get these old ones out. They could be sitting here since 1999, who knows, so a very long time. What you should do is get something like a Phillips head that's slightly wider than a normal one, so it gets a good fit in this socket right here. If there's some dirt in there, get a small nail or something and fetch all the dirt out. You just want an absolutely solid fit. Then you can rest all your weight going downwards and try and crack it open. Sometimes they come open quite easy, sometimes they're super stubborn. It depends where you live. If they are super stubborn, don't wrench it, because you're going to ruin the heads on these. People actually collect the original parts. You can actually sell these old screws, but not if they look like absolute crap, So if you live in a rusty environment, get some penetrating grease on here, like PB Blaster or something like that. WD-40 is not the correct product for this, but it does have those kind of properties. If you want a really good product, I'll link something in the description below. You can see that one slightly on there. What you should do is put the penetrating oil on here and leave it for maybe an hour, or do it before you go bed and wake up in the morning, and it'll fetch up quite easy. If they start rounding out, use your same drill that you're going to buy anyway for these countersinking things and just drill them out. Simply just get a small drill bit, drill through, and then slowly increase the drill bit until it's drilled out, and then it will pop right off. It's no problem at all. So depending where your pads are going to be, public or private, or your style of play, whether you play singles or doubles, is going to depend on how many holes we're going to drill in this whole process, or whether you're a perfectionist and you want to do everything. If you play at home in a private location, there's not really any need to have these brackets on the center right here. It just kind of gets in the way. You stub your foot, shoe, it's just pretty annoying. So you can just take those off completely. They work perfectly fine with brackets on the outside. Secondly, you can remove these outer screws right here on the outer 4 panels. Again, they work perfectly well, and you know, there's no gap between there, so you can leave those off too if you want to. If you want to be totally lazy, that is. And then if you play singles, the only 4 you need to countersink is this middle panel right here. So it cuts the job time right down. However, if you play doubles, and you should because doubles is great, then you're going to need to countersink in addition these brackets right here, those brackets on the other side right here, and also this strip here. I recommend countersinking this strip because some people remove it, but then you have this kind of hole in the middle of the pad, and it's just really horrible. So in this case, you would countersink these ones right here, and there's 5 on each side, and then it also looks great as well. However, if your pads are in a public location, maybe you do want to keep these brackets on, in which case you're going to be countersinking these brackets as well on each pad. So let's get started. So if it's your first time doing this, I really recommend doing a bracket first. If you mess it up somehow, it's kind of hard to mess it up, but if you do, then you have a lot more of these. If you're going to mess up a big panel, then they're going to be a lot harder to replace. So we're going to start with a triangle bracket here and just go through the procedure of drilling it. So 2 things very important when drilling. That is the speed of the drilling process. So we need a variable speed drill so we can drill slowly. And number 2, the heat as well. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on fancy drill bits, they will blunt out eventually. So we need to keep the heat under control and the speed under control as well. So when drilling metal, we need to drill metal really slowly. You can see our drill bit here is made of a similar material to what we're actually drilling. So it's a survival of the best one, right? So if we're going to drill this like we drill wood, then we're going to ruin our drill bit, waste money, and it's going to be a total nightmare. So when we're drilling this, we need to go slowly. So you can see that I was going quite slowly. It's nowhere near the full power of the drill at all. And you can see we're making a nice little countersunk hole there. If your drill bit is cheap, then what you'll notice here is burring around the top here and also an uneven cut. Look how even that looks, how shiny that looks. There's no burring, it's nice and smooth. That's a good indicator you have a good quality drill bit here. And I say that's important because what a lot of cheap manufacturers do is try to sell you a high speed or a titanium or a carbide drill bit, but really what they're selling you is a rebranded really bad one. So you should have nice smooth cuts that look like this. Another thing you'll notice is you see these steel flakes coming off here. Again, a sign of a good drill bit. If you have a really cheap one, nothing will really come off this. It's just going to heat up, get really hot, and you're not really going to see any flakes coming off. Again, a sign you're using a really bad drill bit. So while countersinking these holes here, what you'll notice is this gets quite hot. It'll be hot to touch. But not only this, but your drill bit as well. So it's really important that you keep this drill bit cool to preserve your drill bit, because if this heats up, it doesn't matter whether it's made of diamonds, for example, it's gonna burr. That's the problem here. So what I recommend is having a spray bottle of water or something like that. And as you're drilling, you'll have 2 hands. I don't because I'm holding a camera. But as you're drilling, just spray the bit itself and the hole as well. If it starts singeing and bubbling, you know it's too hot and you're going too fast. You need to kind of slow down a bit. So when we're drilling here, you just want to get a spray bottle of water and add it while you're drilling. What you'll notice on industrial machines, if anyone's worked in a factory, if you get a really powerful drill machine, you'll see it's actually attached to a water inlet and it's constantly cooling either a blade of a cutting saw or a drill bit for drill bits that cut metal. It's quite standard, and this should be no different from this process at all. So we need to keep this cool and make sure the drill is going slowly. So when drilling these, what's really important is to check the depth with your countersink screw here. So if we put that in here, we can sort of see how far we are off our sort of desired depth here. So we can see we can put that in there. We're still like, you know, almost a millimeter away. The problem is if you drill these too far, then this isn't going to kind of hold this bracket in place. It's going to start moving around a bit, and you're never going to be able to fix that. So it's very important you only want to go down to your desired level and not mess up these brackets. And this is why we're starting on a bracket as well for this purpose. So we're about a millimeter off here, so we're going to keep drilling a little more. So let's check the depth now. We've gone a little further. So you can see there we're almost pretty much flat there. You know, it's barely sticking out. From the top, again, it looks really good, to be honest. I can go a tiny bit further, but you want to be kind of aiming for something similar to that. You can see when I wriggle it around and get it in the proper spot, you can see it's pretty much flush there. So I think I'm going to settle with that. So now you've drilled your first hole to the exact kind of depth you want. You can sort of eyeball it and work out how big they should be. So the checking process for the rest of the holes isn't going to be a lot more frequent. So we're done with our very first bracket. We're going to put that on the machine and see if it fits. But before we do that, I'll show you a little tip. If we turn it over, you can see where the metal has come down here. You can just whack that with a hammer to get it straightened out. It's pretty thin. Okay, one down. A few more to go. So here's one little tip that definitely will help you. You can see this corner panel right here. You can see the holes aren't quite aligned up. So you would think you have to countersink kind of the edge here and get a bigger hole. But that's not really true at all. What you should do is loosen these adjacent brackets here. And when they're loose, you can slide them over just a little bit, creating this gap here. Same here as well. So that just moves over. These are loose now. I loosen them with the screwdriver. You see that gap that's now opened up? So now the adjacent ones are all loose. You can actually grab this panel and move it over, and you can see it'll be nice and center now. So it's kind of important to get the adjacent ones loose. Otherwise you're just kind of ruining your panels for no reason at all. So all of these metal flakes here are just from one bracket. You can see how many there are, and if that gets in your fingers or feet, it hurts a lot. So it's important to kind of vacuum this up or do it outside in a safer area. So now we've got a bit of confidence from doing the brackets. We can do something like a big plate like this one here. This is the center panel. If you do mess these up, it's not the end of the world, because you can move it to the far corner. It's no problem at all. Your best one should be put in the center. But for these, yeah, pretty much just repeat the process with the brackets all over again. So now let's talk about these center strips here for doubles. What you'll find is, you see this metal strip here? That sort of pretty much joins onto the center strip there. And at the back, there's another one which I don't actually have on, one that goes here and one that goes there. And then once this is sandwiched between this plate here and the one at the front, you know, they pretty much just sit there. They don't move backwards and forwards. But if you look at the actual holes here, they're slightly rectangular. They're not circle like they are on the brackets. So you can see a little better here. So when this is in place, you can see that it's cinched up against this end right here. So you can see the hole is somewhat in the middle. But however, on a different pad, the hole might be pushed on one end like that, and that is why these holes are more rectangular, because the fit isn't exact. So the problem is, if you countersink these right in the middle, which is what you would expect, you take this bar off the machine, countersink it in the middle, you go to put it back in the machine and the hole lines up at the end right there. Well, that's pretty bad. So the best thing to do to fix this problem with the rectangle holes here is get this where it needs to be on your pad right here. The first thing you could do is sort of mark where on the rectangular hole your actual hole is, and then countersink that area there. Option number 2, you can just keep one machine screw in to keep it exactly where it is, and then you can countersink these while they're attached to the pad. You're going to get metal flakes in your arrows, it could be really annoying, but that way you know the holes are exactly where they need to be. So the choice is really yours with that one. So what you'll find on these double plates is you don't have to drill far at all. You know, it's almost a few seconds. It's nothing like the brackets. What you can do is get carried away like you do with the brackets and the plates and go, you know, full hog on this, but then you've gone way too far. It's a very small screw here with a very small head, and these holes kind of naturally dip down anyway, so you don't need too long on these. So this is a normal hole right here, and this is a modified one. Look how much I've taken out, barely anything, right? So if I put my screw in there, my M4, watch this. You can see it's perfectly flat already. So that's the danger of going, you know, whole hog on these. You want to avoid that and take these real slow, because it's pretty hard to replace these if you mess them up. So this is what it will look like afterwards. It's a lot quicker than all the brackets and everything, but super nice and flat. You can really bracket these two super easy now.
A few moments later.
So with the last panel down, we are finished. Check it out. It's not bad, is it? So I pretty much countersink the whole middle row there, both center panels. I took the brackets off the middle, and we're done. Look at that. It's not bad, is it? No more dome screws, no more cap screws, nothing getting in the way from 4 and 8 panel glory. So this won't only work on 4 panel, but it'll also work on older pump pads as well, and pretty much bracket style pad systems, apart from Technomotion, because that was countersunk out of the factory. Good old Technomotion.